Welcome to Two Girls in a Pod Life's Journey, where we explore the journey of becoming the best version of ourselves. Join me, Christy, and my partner Sharon, a licensed professional counselor for over 20 years, as we dive into conversations with inspiring individuals who've overcome obstacles and achieved their goals. We'll discuss the power of self-awareness, compassion, and collaboration, and how embracing our authentic selves can create a ripple effect of positive change. Let's embark on this path of growth, empowerment, and connection together. I want to remind you to follow us on social media. If you love this podcast, be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, and Blue Sky. If you'd like to find out more about what goes on behind the scenes, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Adventures of Two Girls in a Pod, where we highlight some of our travels near and far. Or watch Sharon mix up a batch of drinkable delights on Sip and Savor. Also, if you love this podcast, leave us a review on Spotify. This helps us get discovered by even more amazing listeners like yourself. Share with your friends and family, and make sure to subscribe to our website at twogirlsinapod.com so that you never miss an episode. Thanks for listening. Hello and welcome. Two Girls in a Pod. We have a guest with us today. We are super excited to have Gretchen Andrew. She is an artist, and we're going to be discussing AI's impact on beauty standards and through the art industry. Welcome.
Great. Thank you so much for having me.
You know, one of the things is that we're always so interested in on our podcast is the journey. So you haven't always done art. So kind of give us a little background about you, like where you started and how that kind of has evolved for you and those things that have happened along the way that have kind of nudged you in this direction, I should say.
Yeah. So I know a lot of people love to do art and also have a fear of it. There's a fear of calling ourselves artists, and there's an insecurity about whether or not we're good enough to do this. And I believe, and I know you guys believe, that everyone has artistry inside them and has a right to be creative and deserves to enjoy that part of themselves. And I had been working in tech. I had studied information systems because I was a practical kid who knew I had to get a real job and all of that. But then I got into Silicon Valley and I thought, this is not for me. There's more out there than this. I was seeing technology used to manipulate our attention, sell us things we don't need, and really honestly make us feel quite bad about ourselves. And I really saw it as a tool of personal transformation. So I posed a challenge to the internet. I said, Internet, can you make me into an artist? Can I learn the skills? Can I meet people? Can I build the career? I cannot emphasize enough. I had no skills. I knew nobody, but I knew about YouTube. I knew about online free courses, and I knew that there's this thing called social media, and people were just sliding into each other's inboxes and having conversations in ways that, for a golden moment, people were more accessible, and you could get your story out there in that way. And so we're 12, 13 years later, and I've just come back from Art Basel, Miami, where I was exhibiting. I've got work at the Whitney Museum of New York. And so much of that journey has been about deciding that I want something and deciding that the biggest limitation of me getting there was probably my own belief system. And that, I mean, it could have been something else, but that journey of personal discovery, I think, is really so much of what you guys cover on this podcast with your other guests and love to talk about. Is I love what I do. And also the reason why I love what I do is because it constantly makes me have to question, where am I the one holding myself back?
Mm-hmm. And I think that's such an important thing that I think people often are trying to identify that external thing. It's like, well, it's not happening because it's not where I live. It's not it can be 1,000 reasons why, but I think when people really step back and look, sometimes it's their own fear. It's the lack of knowledge. It's all of those internal things. And I think when we question that, but what made you decide one day
to leave the sense of what you knew, basically, and go into to try
to unknown?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's funny because at a certain point, it is a single day where you really do decide to take the lead. And I, I think it was that I had this supposedly very good thing. Like I was working at Google, it was 2010, and this was supposed to be the best job in the world. And I could start to already feel that trap that that could be. And so I can't wait another minute. There's always going to be another reason to stay. But right now, I don't own a home. I don't have any kids. I don't have any cost structure. I think people can make these decisions at any point in their lives. But I knew that it was not going to ever be easy or get easier. And I've been reading a lot of Seth Godin at the time. I don't know if you know this author. He writes a lot about marketing, but he also writes a lot about picking yourself and how oftentimes, especially in something like the art world, we think, oh, a gallery hasn't picked me, the museum hasn't picked me. There was a decade of me saying, I've got something to share. I'm picking myself. I'm putting on the exhibition. I'm going onto podcasts. I'm putting it out there into the world. And of course, there are gatekeepers, but also there's so much less of an influence than our own power that we give them.
Absolutely. And I think that's kind of the thing, though, that I think when we buy into a narrative for a really long time, it's kind of hard. I mean, like for you working in the industry sometimes gives you that behind the scenes thing and it's like, whoa, wait a minute, this is what we're doing here. And it sounds like that was kind of for you. What?
Well, there's a big naivete that went into it, right? Like I didn't really know what it meant to be an artist. I didn't know what it took to be successful. I didn't know how hard. I mean, I knew it was supposedly very hard, but it's not like I looked at a bunch of statistics and said, okay, what are my chances? I just said, okay, if I'm going to work this hard, it might as well be something that is underneath my own power. And I think that a lot of people are seeing that now, not just in tech, but layoffs are happening in various industries. And I think we have to always be building our reputation and our skills and our community outside of a corporate structure, because at the end of the day, we have to be able to build our own value and make our own connections. And that's really where I see really a lot of the artistry. I always tell my students, it takes as much creativity to make it work as it does to make the work. And we're artists. You guys are creators. If we apply that same creativity to figuring out how to live in this world where there's capitalism, corporations, and all of this, then we can figure it out. And yeah, don't get me wrong, a lot of work, but also so much freedom.
Well, and I think the thing is that a lot of it is really having that commitment to whatever we're doing and understanding that through that commitment, we're going to have different hurdles we're going to encounter, but anticipate that there might be hurdles. And if there are hurdles, what is it I do that keeps that perseverance for me? So when we're talking and we always talk about what is the purpose? So for you, what is that purpose for the art that you do? And what that message that you would be saying to the world or to the people that are looking at your art or following you or whatever that is.
Yeah, well, especially coming from a tech education and a tech background, I just felt like as a society, we were giving so much power, so much of our own personal power to these corporations, whether that be through our data or our self-image. And there was this screen being put up where it was all being presented as more complicated than it really was. These tech companies will go in front of Congress and talk about how, oh, regulation is, you just don't understand. And that's why regulation is impossible. And you don't understand the model. And almost being very talked down to as consumers, as a society, as a democracy. And when you're in it, to your point before, you're just like, this stuff is not that complicated. And we use words like artificial intelligence and algorithm. And so what I've really wanted to do in my career is find ways of demystifying these technologies, find ways of having them be present and visible in our lives so that we can talk about them, so that we can evaluate them, and that we can remember that we are making choices here. The inevitability of this is a story that we're being told.
And I think that's the biggest thing and one of the things we love about the podcast that we do is because it's the story. And it's through the stories of the people and the journeys that they're on that we start to learn. So maybe we find confidence in them. maybe we find, oh my God, that might be a purpose or whatever that is, but it's that exchange. And like you said, it's that exchange of information. And it is taking away that piece that almost separates you from them. So it's kind of like if you have knowledge and you hold on to the knowledge, you somehow feel elevated, if that makes sense. And then you come in and you say, this is all this means.
Yeah, and that sort of separating of it is, and it's almost a bit paternal in a really, really gross way of like, don't worry about it. The tech companies will take care of this. You don't need to worry about how this works. It's good for you. Trust us, it's good for you.
Mhm.
And so specifically in the work that I'm making now, we're looking at the ways that these algorithms and artificial intelligence, that's one way of saying it. But then also we're talking about filters. Most of us have heard of beauty filters. Most of us know that
Mhm.
Zoom has a feature where you can make things look a little bit smoother. Instagram filters, TikTok filters, filters on our LinkedIn profiles. Those are algorithms driven by AI that are making choices about what it means to be beautiful, what it means to be professional. And they're changing our expectations of others and ourselves in a way where we now look in the mirror and think we don't look right. Like humanity, the face has existed for a very long time and has had this beauty and this diversity. And now we're being told that the lips are like 1/10 the size of what they're supposed to be. And it this comes from that technology. This comes from AI. This comes from our expectations of how we're supposed to look on a screen that's 2 inches high, as opposed to how we look and feel in person.
Mhm.
And so that as I've done this through my art and through the fine art world, I've also just realized I can't even be giving my power just to the fine art world. This is a conversation that's bigger than tech. It's bigger than AI. It's bigger than the fine art world. And that we really need to be talking about the way this is not just impacting us, but young people who are seeing faces and bodies that literally don't exist online. But because those modifications are usually invisible, what I do in my art is I make every time the lips get bigger, the waist gets skinnier, the boobs get bigger, I make those marks and scars so that we can actually point out and say, hey, this is what's happening. And are we okay with this? Are we choosing this knowingly?
Mhm.
Well, I think it's so interesting because, we're talking about body image, and body image is such a huge thing, and there's so much body dysphoria. And what people don't understand is a lot of it comes because what we are fed daily is those images. And we were just talking about this, and I just did a talk on it, the resizing they just did. And I don't know if you've noted, there's they resized. So now a large is a
Like
medium.
clothing.
Yes. They just resized. So now when you go, say, Amazon, whatever, and you go and you put it in, it says, oh, this is your best size. Well, now if you were a medium, now you're a large. And they go and change and they do these numbers. But what I don't think they understand is, and I don't know who they work with behind the scenes or where the money's coming. I don't know any of that, but I know there's money involved. But what it does is then that person goes and buys that medium that they just bought a month ago. Now it doesn't fit. Now there's this whole new thing going on in their head of, oh my God, what did I do? How did this happen? I'm doing everything the same. We start to have self-doubt, and we do that internalization instead of looking at, wait a minute, what's the industry doing?
How did the scale change?
Wow, I had not heard of that. But yeah, like, I mean, I spent a lot of time abroad and there's always like the sizing between everything. And that's very disruptive to, yeah, how insidious.
It is. And it was real fast. I don't even remember where I was seeing it. And then it says, yeah, new resizing. And then when I went to Amazon and I was going to order something, I was sort of like, wait a minute, how did I go up a size? I haven't done anything different. And just stuff like that. But once again, I always tell people, stop and do some critical thinking at those moments. Even when you're looking at something on these platforms and stuff, do critical thinking. Is this a true image of somebody, or what filters, as you've said, there's filters that are enhancing these things. And how do we start to discern that? Because it's hard.
And realizing the industry redefines the standard so often, to however they want. So,
And I mean, if you're doing imagery with women, it may not look like what you're seeing on a screen. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the way that my work gets made is I start with the initial photograph. I have a special process. I can turn that into an oil painting. And while that paint is still wet, I give that wet painting to a robot that's given the same algorithm as the Facetune algorithm, as these filters. But instead of, because it's a wet painting and not a digital photograph, every time it's moving pixels around, instead it's moving paint around, and it drags the paint to make the waist skinnier, and it cuts off, making these literal marks and scars to make the arms skinnier and the lips bigger. So every mark becomes an area where we can see the disagreement between how we actually look and how AI says we should look. I've got one behind me. I know everyone might not be watching, but let me pull this out.
Oh, wow.
So everywhere you see those red ribbony marks is somewhere the algorithm's making my face skinnier and my lips bigger, and then my boobs larger and my arms thinner. And that's everywhere that is different between how I actually look and how this filter would have changed me.
wow, it's interesting that you can expose that like that. That's really good.
Yeah. So where did this idea come from for you to do it in this fashion, this process? I mean, because it's kind of fascinating.
There's a lot of tech involved, and it took me quite a while to get all of that in place. I had been thinking in my personal life about all these times that, especially as women, we're asked to be put into shapes that aren't natural to us. And that started as a metaphorical shape, the role that we're put in, the contortion that we do to fit the societal ideas of who we're supposed to be at certain ages. And I really wanted to develop a portrait that could show the difference between the inside and outside, the difference between who we are and who those expectations say. Because yes, this is about AI expectations and algorithmic beauty expectations. It's also about any time that we're told that we're not enough, or that we should or could be different to fit in more. And that's a whole part of the history of portraiture, of how people wanted to present themselves. Portraiture has always involved an element of choice or dishonesty in how we present ourselves.
I think it's interesting because when we look at AI and people say, well, who's AI? And basically, it's still the conceptualization of, so it's the number of people who conceptualize this way, or what group is conceptualizing women in this fashion. And oftentimes what women don't understand is the people who are conceptualizing women in this fashion are men. And that's no disrespect, but a male body is very different than a female body. But even when you're looking, if I'm even working with men and they say, oh, I want my muscles to look like that. And I might look at them and say, but honey, your body's not made in that way. So no matter what you do, your muscle will not look like this person because you have two different type of muscle styles. But I think that we have continuously been told like one size fits all when it comes to what women are supposed to look like.
Yeah, the homogenization is another huge element of this. There have always been beauty standards. And I do want to talk about men in a little bit because that's my next series. But there's this huge history of women, and it changes throughout history. But what's different now is it's a single universal beauty standard that's being spread across the world at warp speed. There are things like injectables and plastic surgery where it's not just that we're told that we should look different. We're told we should buy something and spend the money to look that way. Mm-hmm. And that intertwine into the use of capital to change ourselves into basically a commodity where every culture, every race, every type of woman now has the same look. Mm-hmm. And I've been working with the Miss Universe contestants because they're so gorgeous. They're already the pinnacle of what beauty is supposed to be. And yet the algorithm says they're not good enough. And it takes Miss Jamaica and it makes her the same as Miss Finland. And Miss Finland should not have the same body as Miss Venezuela, who should not have the same body as Miss Philippines. But that's what's happening, is we're literally seeing an erasure of cultural diversity within this as well.
Well, and I think that's the other thing. I think that when we're trying to fit all women into and not just women, it's people. We're trying to fit people into these molds that are created by, I always say, these arbitrary entities that we know nothing about, but we give a lot of control and power to. And then when you can't fit that internal struggle really begins of, I'm not good enough. Why can't I make this happen? Well, you're never going to make that happen. It is physically impossible. I don't care how much plastic surgery you have. Sometimes you're not going to change certain aspects about yourself. And you're right. I think what it does is it takes away the true beauty of humans. And the beauty of humans is our diversity. It's that beauty within all cultures, genders, everything. It's all of that.
Yeah, and we're seeing it, before. There might have been a celebrity who we would see on like a glossy cover or on the big screen at a movie theater. But now we're on our phones and we're scrolling and we're like, there's Kim Kardashian, there's a photo of me, there's like Lindsay Lohan, there's my cousin. And so we're presented in the exact same context on the exact same screen. So when we see ourselves literally following these digitally and then physically modified women, it's almost like we're standing next to them. And we're not looking in the mirror. We're looking at them having been modified. And that's very different than being in 3D in physical life, where huge lips are one thing from the front, but they're a totally different thing from the side. But society doesn't even care anymore if we don't look good from the side. As long as we look good on this screen, that's where we're putting the prioritization. We're forgetting that we actually have physical bodies that have physical feeling and that age and deteriorate and change. And when you hear some of the interviews that they've done with like young girls, like 10, 11, looking at social media and saying, I could never look that good. And you just said it. Yeah, no one can. But even when we know that these are modified images, it insidious, like images are very powerful. We can intellectually know that this doesn't exist, but it doesn't get into our psyche in the same way that looking at thousands and thousands of these images do.
Well, and especially with youth, I believe they really have no concept of how much that is happening without them knowing all of the stuff, all the change that's happening on the backside.
Those influences are very prevalent. And once again, because it's something you start out doing from such a young age, you don't know how to discern. But I remember I worked with a young lady. She was in elementary school. True story. Elementary school. And they were going to have a day where they went swimming or something. And she was having this horrendous time with it. She told her mom, absolutely not. I'm never going to do that. So anyway, mom brings her to me, and I knew mom anyway. And so I'm meeting with her. And I said, honey, you love to swim. It was her body image. And they're like, baby, you are 10 years old. And I don't look like I'm supposed to look. I said, how are you supposed to look at as 10-year-old? But then I said, who do you look at? And then when I went and looked at who she was looking, I said, well, first off, they're way older than you. Their body's more developed than you, but we don't teach them this. All they do is start doing that comparison of, I'm not going to ever. And she goes, well, I'm never going to look like that. I said, I hope not. And she goes, but she's beautiful. I said, honey, she's beautiful in her own way. But you will not look like her because you are you, and your beauty is going to come out, and it's going to be your beauty, and it's not going to be a comparison, or you can't have somebody else's beauty.
And, we've been seeing this in some of the characters that you get developed for young kids, the influence of anime, which is actually not primarily like a children's visual medium.
Mm-hmm.
And even the stuffed animals and various things, they have huge eyes now, like this presence of the eyes on these things, are part of this AI-driven look that is very young, taught that this is, the teddy bears have changed. Like they just have.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the neatest things, and I love about what we can do, is we can bring awareness to people. So when people listen to this, they start having an awareness of, oh, wait a minute. And maybe even as a parent, should I be having these conversations with my kids? And once again, this is not strictly set up for women. The diet industry has become a multi-billion-dollar industry, not just off women, but off men, because now that industry is targeting men more as well.
Yeah, there's a huge rise in plastic surgery amongst men in Silicon Valley. The Wall Street Journal just did a big article about it. I was just quoted in a Business Insider article called "Being Hot is Now a Job Requirement." And especially in tech, there is such a cult of youth. Peter Thiel famously said, never fund anybody over 30. And so men are starting to now realize that they're being judged on how they look and not just what they do. And the podcasters are getting these like jaw implants, getting their jaws broken and remade. And this is not the gender equality I desire. I wanted us to stop doing this to women instead of to start doing it to men. But it does represent a new thing. This is for women, this is an evolution of a conversation. And for men, it's been a little off the radar, the pressure, the looks maxing, the muscles. There's an app called Manly that does all of that. It gives them muscles, it gives them jaws, it unleashes their alpha male inside. And it's as grossly toxically masculine as any product I've ever seen advertised.
It's even like when we're talking about even the clothing industry, the expectation is that you look this way, you dress this way. It's kind of creepy in a way sometimes. It's kind of like if you walk in the room and everybody looks the same. It's kind of weird because sometimes the style of dress will be the same, which then almost makes them look, it's just weird.
It's literally commodifying ourselves as women. We're literally saying, I am replaceable to every other face, to every other body out there. And no one trained AI in a bunch of photos of us when we first woke up in the morning, right? Like the whole influence of the porn industry and various other things in that image culture is one thing, but there is not stock photography of people looking horrendous. And that's honestly just most of the time how we look. I take a lot of photos. I've done fashion. I've done the modeling thing. It's a quantity game, right? There's a billion bad ones, and then there's like the one shot that looks the way that the director wants it to look. But no one took all of the bad ones and made that part of the training data, which is why we're getting these AI actors now, these AI actresses now, where they're not going to age. They're not going to cause a scene. They're not going to demand more. They're not going to do anything unseemly, which also means I don't think we're going to love them as much because we love a celebrity breakdown. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, they always put freckles on them because they're trying to find some way to make their skin look less uncanny. They want it to be perfect, but they're still, look at every single one of these. They've got freckles and it's a bit infantilized. The face itself looks way younger than the body that it's been given. And so when our 10-year-old kids and everyone sees us, the face they can identify with. And it's the rest of the body that they think is wrong for them.
We talked a little bit earlier, you made a comment about like when we age and stuff like that. I think the thing is we talk about breaking down, we talk about all of this stuff. And even in the verbiage that we use as we age is negative. Instead of, I'm having growth and development, I'm evolving into my own beauty or whatever it is. That is not the terminology we use, because if we talk about that, then people aren't going to be going and buying the anti-aging creams and all the other stuff that they are spending a lot of money on.
I really want to bring it back to the money as well. There's such an opportunity cost of capital here. It is different. So Tina Fey wrote a book, more than 10 years ago called Bossy Pants. And in it, she talks about, she's like, I was not a beautiful child. And when I grew up, that was like, you just developed a personality. Now you're expected to do something about it. You're expected to get the lip fillers, to buy the things, to go on Ozempic. And all of that takes so much time, so much money. And it's almost presented as a freedom, a choice, a consumer choice that we have as women, where before, I feel like we're expected to do there was a lot that we had to do before. Like we have to pay 3 times as much for a haircut as men. We have to like get our eyebrows done. Our teeth have to be straight and white. And now there's just an arms race where we're commodifying ourselves into this single face. That face almost becomes an expensive handbag where you say, I've got the money to do this. It's a status symbol. And it's a way of also showing our wealth in a way that has no personality, no individuality, and is perpetuating this idea that this natural face is poor.
Exactly. I was thinking of Dolly Parton. What I love about her, she's very upfront. She doesn't sit there and say, this happened naturally. She says, if you got the money, you want to do it, you do it. So it's not like this pretense, but I think what we have with a lot of people is whether they're doing the Ozempics and not just all of the GLP-1s and stuff like that. And then they go out and look how good I look, but they're not talking about what is that journey to get there. And
How
I
do
think
they
what we're
feel?
doing, and we're not educating people. We are not educating them. When I don't understand, if I'm getting on one of these and it's to say lose weight, then why am I having to take it the rest of my life? Why are you not teaching me what the skills I'm supposed to have in order to not need you the rest of my life?
Yeah, it really goes back to our first conversation around mindset and understanding where our limiting beliefs are and who's feeding those things to us. And so I also do want to say, like, I don't want this to be a shame-based conversation for anybody who's engaged with this stuff or thinking about doing with it. I clearly know people who engage with all of these different products. I think there's real safety concerns with it. Like, you have to go to a really good place. It does cost a lot of money. And my overarching message on this is that our appearance should reflect a love of self. I love to dress up. I love to do makeup. I'm very happy that my parents got braces for me. I'm not saying that there's a real pressure in society to look a certain way. And sometimes that isn't a battle that all of us want to fight on every single day.
Well, and I think that's why what I'm saying is take the time to do critical thinking and educate yourself, but not that you have to educate yourself. At some point, get educated through other things, like through listening to podcasts or going and looking what is the science and the stuff behind it. Because the more education you have, the less bad you're going to feel, because you're going to feel empowered. So when I make those decisions, it's going to be based on me and not consumer driven. And I think that's the biggest thing when we're talking is always the education of yourself in order to make those informed decisions for you, so that when you make that decision, it truly comes from that authentic place internally versus, once again, that drive in those algorithms or all those things that are trying to push and drive people. We're always really big on that because it's never about shaming or saying what somebody is doing is not. Everybody is doing the best they can with what they have in those moments. And that's the beauty of it, is that the next moment I can have more education, or I can meet somebody who can inspire me to change the way in which I'm looking at the world, that will help impact me internally and bring about that change.
Yeah, and it has to involve internal, because if not, what happens is, and you see a lot of cases of this, I've done studies on this, where you get one thing done, you get your lips done, and then all of a sudden your face gets sort of thrown off, and you've got to get the cheek filler, and then, oh, actually, like, now my face doesn't look right on this body, and the balancing just keeps getting thrown off. And we see this all the time with people who've gone on Ozempic, lost a ton of weight, and their body isn't really meant to be that skinny, and they've not developed the muscles or eating habit or whatever to sort of hold that frame. It really is, like, I know, like, anyone I know who's wanted to get in different shape or lose weight or, deal with their skin in a different way through eating, it involves education about how our body works. It doesn't just involve like injecting toxins into our body and hoping for the best. And I know there are edge cases, but like, there have been people who've been paralyzed, people bought injectables on Alibaba that were mislabeled, that were expired, that were botulized, that had cases of people getting HIV because the needles weren't used properly and cleaned. We're not even asking the questions when we've gotten to the place where we are going to the clinics, we are getting injectables, we are getting the plastic surgery. We're not even asking the right questions about this pretty serious medical intervention. It is not like getting a manicure, but it's presented to us like it's the same thing like getting a manicure.
And when I think about that, it's kind of like when you go to a salon and you're going to get your hair done. And you take in this picture and you tell I want my hair to look like this. And a lot of them will say, okay. And it's whatever. I love when they'll sit there and say, well, you do know that your hair is not going to look like that because this hair is this way and your hair is this way. So that's that education piece, instead of just going and cutting it without telling the person. And then when they're upset about, well, I don't look like that. Well, you're never going to look like that. Well, why didn't you tell me that before? It's those little simple things. I mean, it's like tiny things. It's those little conversations that we could have that would be so empowering for people. And it doesn't take a lot. And I think if you tell the person, and I don't know if sometimes maybe they're afraid I'm going to lose the sale or something like that, or maybe I'm going to offend them or whatever that is.
Or they work for a clinic where they're going to get fired, or like, right? Like a lot of these people, practitioners are not necessarily the owners. There's a lot of economics and jobs.
And I get it, but I think that sometimes it's just those little details that really help people. And you can take the step back and say, okay, well, then what kind of hairstyle would look better on me? Could you show me some or whatever that is? But once again, I mean, and that's just kind of a simple thing, but I think it's still, I mean, you wear your hair around everywhere you go. You know what I'm saying? So you kind of want it to look good. And you might have this image of what you think will look good on you. But I always love this too, because, people talk, and this is something, face structure is different. So hair is going to look different on face structure, similar to what you said. If I go in and get my lips done, then my face does not look symmetrical or anything else any longer. Now I just look like I have big lips and little bitty eyes or something. And you can't, what am I doing with my eyes? So I get it.
Staple them, right? Yeah. And I mean, I like this. Like, I think this is the other thing. Is like some of this stuff is really fun. Like, I love fashion. Like, I've never like really mastered makeup myself, but I love that people have these things that we play with and that we present ourselves differently. And it's not like I'm addicted to this idea of the pure or the natural or any of this. But like I said, if it reflects a love of self, if it feels fun to you, if it's coming from that place, then like have at it. Like enjoy your body. And I have seen like interesting usages of these algorithms for like the trans community, where people feel like they're in the wrong body and they want to visualize themselves different, or people who have goals, they want to lose weight, they want to get a six-pack, whatever it is, they want to get healthier and stronger. And they use them to visualize this image. Like, of course, but we're talking about edge cases. Most of this is driven by insecurity. Most of this is driven by capitalism. Most of this is not made to make us transform into the freest, most happy version of ourselves.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's what it is. And, one of the things is reminding people that there are a lot of tools out there and you utilize the tool, but the tool cannot become you, or it can't become the end all to beat all. Everything, as a therapist, I give people tools. If I give you 10 tools, you might say, I don't like any of them but one. Then use the one that resonates with you. And that's the thing too. It's not women, men, if you want to dress up, look good, do it. And if you look in the mirror and you say, oh my goodness, I'm rocking it today, then you've done it. That's that internal feel. So it's not saying, and I agree with you, it's not saying or implying that you don't use the tools. And if you are obese and you need that tool of Ozempic because you have health issues, then don't sit there and say, I'm not going to use it because of, no, make those informed decisions once again. And that's what we're talking about. Be informed, because as soon as you're informed, you're empowered, because the decisions you then make are based on you and not some external driving force.
Absolutely. The agency is so important.
Yes. When you're talking about this, and it's so interesting because in these interviews we've done with a lot of women, they've worked for places like Google or, the Fortune 500 companies. And then it's like, I don't want to do that anymore. And they've really switched over to those things of empowerment. How do I not only empower myself, but how do we empower others?
And I love that we're starting to see that change, because for so long, I think that you did see them getting into those industries and thinking that was the only way to be successful.
Right. And you had to sort of adopt that male persona, that you had to change who you were to be effective there.
Right.
And, I think what's cool is when we have people like you who are doing these things, not exposing in that way, but educating. So it's not an expose on something, it's an education on something to help people, once again, to look through a different set of eyes, to learn something not only about themselves, but they learn about you as the artist.
Yeah, the world that we're in. I always say that this process reveals the usually hidden scars of social media filters. And societal scars are there, the way that it impacts us is there. we could be having this conversation without this painting, right? But the painting helps center that conversation in a way that we can take it to young people, we can take it to a broader media landscape and say, look, this is what's happening.
Well, I think anytime we open the conversation, we provide the opportunity for the conversation. We provide the opportunity for that growth. I don't think our philosophy is we do none of this without gratitude. And we know gratitude is something that's really huge for you. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think that there's such a gratitude for health within all of this, physical health and mental health, and feeling that with that privilege and that opportunity to use the energy that comes from that to do something that I really believe in. And there's a lot of ways to make art or to have podcasts that don't potentially share parts of that journey. Like it is a bit vulnerable. And really, I'm just so grateful for the opportunity to bring the work that I'm doing outside of the fine art context, and grateful to be having this conversation with both of you.
You know, and I think when a lot of times too, I think if I'm looking at those images, sometimes if I can take that step back and look at myself and say something as simple as, I'm grateful for my hair. It's so healthy. It's whatever, regardless of what other parts of my body I may want to work on, or I'm grateful for my lips, or, you know, I got straight teeth, or and I tell people it's such a small thing, but it has a huge impact.
I think that when we're able to do that, then we are more aware of why we are making the decisions that we are. Are we trying to conform, or are we really getting more to our authentic self?
It's a journey. So talk a little bit about your next project coming up. What is that going to look like for you? Is it really different? Is it?
No, I'm same conceptual and technical process, but I am looking at the way this impacts men. And diving into that is interesting because I'm not a man. I don't have that same experience. So it's a little bit more anthropological. I'm doing more research, talking to more people. And I think we're going to learn quite a lot about, a lot has been said about, men today, epidemic of male loneliness and expectations. And I have a huge part of me that's like, shut up. Like this has been like have been dealing with this forever. Mm-hmm. I also think there's an opportunity to learn more about the way that we're treated and the way that that gets processed by seeing it outside of ourselves. And so working on men using Georg Basilitz's Hero series that he made of soldiers after World War II as a sort of baseline where to investigate masculinity and expectations and the way that AI and algorithms are playing in that arena as well, more and more.
Interesting.
And I think it really is interesting because regardless of people, there are some people who said, well, about gender roles, they don't exist anymore, whatever. Yes, they do.
Oh my God. Who says that?
No, it's reading the thing out there like, what? Where are you living? I don't understand this. But I think what it is that gender roles do not help us. They actually keep us in a box. And I'm talking about with men and for women. And when I, in my practice, I have predominantly done women and children. And then in the last year, since 2000 and about 14, I've seen a big uptick. So I predominantly have men now, which is really a different thing for me. But one of the things I was telling them is you have to understand society has done an injustice to you. This idea of macho and men don't cry and all this, I said, that's really great, but that's okay because y'all are leaving your wives or girlfriend or whatever, your kids 5 to 10 years earlier because of these very things. And gender roles are not keeping you healthy. They don't keep any of us healthy. So being able to, once again, not necessarily expose, but educate people on this, I think is a really important thing. So it's kind of exciting.
Yes, I'm very excited. It's going to be a journey that I'm looking forward to sharing another journey.
Right. Well, I think it's wonderful. And I think that continuing to do that work and to know that purpose and what you're trying to identify and And I do love the fact that one of the things you said is this isn't about body shaming. This isn't about anything like that. It really is about educating and about maybe changing the narrative a little bit in order to help people to be more healthy.
Yeah, and I ultimately get to do what I do every day, and I love it. And I feel very free and very happy, even within the difficult parts. And that same feeling is one I think that gets very constrained when we put expectations around gender roles and beauty and body shape on people. And I can just say that as soon as you shed that, it feels like it's a process worth going through, right? Like therapy is a process worth going through. It's hard to really explain what's different at the end other than everything's better.
And I think sometimes when people are trying to describe those monumental things that take place in their life, there aren't really words because it's such an internal experience. So it's not like it's not like your experience is going to match this. So even for you, this journey started, in this tech world, and now it's evolved into this. And trying to explain that to somebody, I don't think they would really be able to conceptualize it in the same way because it's so personal.
Like you become more you, and that feels better. It doesn't sound real, but that's what it is with art. That's what it is with a lot of these processes. And
Yeah.
And we always identify that as spinning the light.
right, spinning the light.
When somebody is able to get to more of that authentic peace, you spin that internal light, and that internal light then gets to be seen by more people around you. And it almost becomes this contagious thing. So
I
absolutely.
feel like it has a ripple effect. So yeah.
Yeah. See, if you hadn't done this, if you haven't done this journey, you wouldn't be doing this art. So then we wouldn't be having this conversation. People wouldn't be having conversations about what does that really mean?
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's amazing. The other thing that I think is really fascinating that this isn't like something that was being done. So you would think that there would be a little bit of anxiety around it. Was that for you? Because this is like a new way of looking at art.
The art world does tend to really reward that, which is good. And there's, I very much with this series wanted to find something that was specific to the time that we were living in, and also to connect it to the history of portraiture, in which people are always presenting themselves in particular ways and showing what they value as a result. And my favorite art always has one foot in tradition and one foot in the future.
Oh, nice. I think it's wonderful that you were able to conceptualize this and then bring it into fruition, because a lot of people will think about an idea until they think it right into the ground. And that's where it stays. But it sounds like for you, you really thought about it, conceptualized it, and then it became your purpose. And, what a great thing for the world, because now the world gets to experience this and have these conversations. And we're grateful for that. And we're so grateful that you decided to join us and share this. And it's so in alignment with what we really talk about and do and live.
Yes. We
Thank
love
you so
your
much
work.
for that opportunity.
Yeah. Where is the best place for people to find you if they want to find out more about your work?
Yeah, so my name is Gretchen Andrew, and probably the absolute best thing is to go onto my website and sign up to my email newsletter. I'll let you know where I'm exhibiting. Would love to invite you down. I'm also on Instagram at Gretchen Andrew, same thing on Twitter. But I send a lot of the invitations to see the physical work, to join the parties, to be part of the conversation through the email.
We'll be including the links also in the description, but what is the name of your website?
Just GretchenAndrew.com.
Okay.
Wow, you made it easy.
Oh, I did, yeah. At Gretchen Andrew, GretchenAndrew.com. Yeah. Believe me, like I've made it hard to not find me on the internet. So
There you go. That's good.
Well, once again, thank you so much for joining us. And we really hope that this resonates with people and that you get more people who are going to say, I really want to check that out and follow your art and see where it takes you and see where it takes them too, because it's a journey. So
Yes.
again, thank you so much. And thank you everybody for tuning in and listening and doing all the stuff that you do. We really, really appreciate it. And we will be back soon. Yeah, we're running into holidays right now. So that's kind of been a weird thing. And then we're going to be gone for the holiday as well. So just letting everybody know that there might be a little bit of a hiatus thing, but and then maybe not, because we never know. We just go, it's all organic with this and what we do. So anyway, thank you so much. And we will be back